Hello, welcome to Single Noise Podcast. My name is Brian Lamar. As I mentioned in the previous podcast, my co-host Andrew DeSillis is out of the country. He's in Italy. He's on his honeymoon with his beautiful wife. I was at his wedding. I'm sure we'll talk about it when he gets back in a couple of weeks. But it's just me today at Single Noise. We're brought to you by Aura Rocket. We're a Market One's company, and today I have awesome guests. I'm really excited to talk to Samuel Cohen from Fairgen. Samuel, how are you, sir?
Well, great. Thank you for having me, Brian.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. You've been very active on LinkedIn, and your company has been very active and doing really cool stuff. So I'm kind of excited to sit down and catch up a little bit and talk about all the cool stuff that Fairgen is doing. Maybe start off with what is Fairgen? A basic, hopefully that's an easy question. What is Fairgen?
Basically, Fairgen is about stimulating people's behaviors, attitudes, and anything they do when they basically pick products, pick ideas, and anything around that. So we started 4 years ago, and we were kind of the first to bring these kinds of ideas to the industry. And now we work with some of the largest brands in the world, most I would say most of the agency space, and also with a lot of panels. So we cover the space quite much.
So your strategy is not just to work with brands. You'll work with agencies, sample companies, anybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's always very surprising. Like every single call I do with an agency, and when I explain that we can actually give them our product to use with our brands, it's always very surprising. I see ourselves as basically the good guys of the simulation play out there, and I also believe that to get this technology to be in the hands of more people, we need more people to be okay with this technology being in the hands of the brands. And the best way to do that is basically for everyone to be serving it the right way. And I guess we have a great technology, and we want to put it in the hands of as many people as we can.
So you're basically generating synthetic AI powered responses. Is that how you describe what you do?
Yeah.
Is that fair? Yeah. Can you describe like what LLM you're kind of using at the core? Is it
Yeah.
something we're aware of? Is it something unique?
Yeah, we're interestingly transparent with how we do things. Just to step back, we have two basically main offerings. One is like for more foundational research, like where we have basically synthetic boosting. We talked about it always in the last podcast, where we can take a study and basically generate more rows of data for areas where we don't have enough respondents. So that's pretty mature, and that's used by many of the largest and highest quality groups of the industry. And we also expanded a year ago to directional research with a digital twins approach, where actually the LLM itself doesn't matter that much, I would say. What really matters is the data behind it. So we built what I like to describe as a tokenizer for survey data and enriched data. So what I mean by that is you can basically bring primary data collections that you do or that we do for you, right? You can bring a segmentation, a UNA, an ad hoc study, and you can turn that into an audience you're going to be able to reuse to run new surveys. You can put them in a focus group, in a one-to-one interview, and basically for any of these use cases, it's going to be based on using one-to-one twins of real people we've surveyed before or you've surveyed before, and that guarantees a basically a level of quality because we actually know what these guys like, want, and use in their day-to-day at a category level.
How much data do you need to kind of develop or build a digital twin? Is it a segmentation questionnaire? What does that look like?
Yeah, and I think that's basically the most important question. Interestingly, because today a lot of providers of the space and players of the space are saying we're training simulation models on millions of survey responses. That's usually like very black boxy, and no one knows what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
And my history actually training large models like in the past, at Meta, I know that basically probably a lot of these players aren't training any models, and it's more kind of RAG style approach under the hood. So first, like what matters is like what are you actually using to model people, and our approach is about modeling in the individual, like at an individual at the individual level, not training a model on all interviews you have in some space in order to kind of then simulate people. We take one person we've got through a 10-minute LOI, whatever survey, for example, and based on the data on this person, we're going to be to basically wrap it into a digital twin of itself, that we're going to be able to ask more questions on that category the survey was about, that basically goes beyond the survey, but not too far. So if it's a survey on skincare, you won't be able to reuse this audience to run a survey on, I don't know, automotive or credit cards or whatever. So we model individuals at the individual level, rather than, so we need basically deep questionnaires, so the long questionnaires, but we don't need like thousands of interviews. Basically,
Right.
that's a key thing in our approach.
Okay. So you'll find in the US, you'll find a male 18 to 24 with certain demographics, and you'll do a lengthy questionnaire with them, and you get enough of those and then you build digital twins that represent the 18 to 24-year-old male category. Is that at its very basic level? That's kind of what you're doing?
So not exactly, because basically
Okay.
we never blend people. Okay, so within the whole product,
Yes.
everything is still at the individual level, where each individual is anyway a twin of just one person. Okay, so
Okay.
Jake, who lives in Ohio and went through this survey on, I don't know, deodorants, for example. This is the person that's going to be in the product, and you're going to be able to ask more questions to. We obviously like anonymize the name and so on and so forth, but that's the person you're going to be able to talk to. We both have a catalog of like 200 audiences that we keep rerunning, and we collect fields through scenes, and for B2C in the US, or other vendors in Europe like Apinio. For media, we use a company called Big Village. For B2B, we use Emporia. So we collect insane amounts of survey data every month on these 200 categories. And each category can be used to run surveys or focus groups or whatever.
Okay, so you're doing not just consumer, you're doing B2B also.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
Oh wow. Okay. I would expect that those are creating different challenges for you.
The question comes often, but actually not, because the main thing is what we're good at doing is turning complex survey data, of a single individual into basically a reusable twin of this person. And so the whole thing is, can you take this like usually complex, like 1,000+ variable studies into the right framing for a model to be able to predict something, right? And that module, not model, module is actually very generic, because what matters is the data. We don't need to prompt engineer things per category or per use case or per consumer or B2B. All of it is into basically smartly tokenizing and structuring the data itself.
When I look through your social media, you talk a lot about more traditional methodology, and I like that. You talk about statistical consistency, you talk about correlations and preserving them, and confidence intervals as kind of the bar that your methodology has to clear to work with your clients. What's the hardest thing to kind of get right, and where do you think it still has limits, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, on the foundational suites and synthetic boosting that we've been offering for 4 years, the bar is incredibly high, because
Yeah,
people
good.
are actually going to reduce fields and replace them by synthetic boost or other ways, and we're talking about quant studies that are very, very structured and complex and so on, like, segmentation studies and UNAs and so on. So the bar is incredibly high, and all of these things need to basically work. Correlations need to be, like, we're talking about percent differences, like percent level or less than percent differences that need to be accurate. So the bar is extremely high. On the digital twins and what I like to think of as exploratory directional research, the bar is very different, because what you need there is for results to be directionally aligned, right? And correlation is a very useful proxy for directionality, I would say. So I would say that there's different levels people evaluate us on, but it always relies on the same idea, which is that basically they're gonna create an audience or use one of our audiences for a specific area, like skincare, for example, and then they'll take like a concept test they've run before, or ads test, or whatever thing they tested recently in this same category, and they're gonna run the same questionnaire through Fairgen twins that they've run, in the real world for themselves or their clients, and they're basically
Yeah.
gonna compare the results. And there's different levels we get evaluated at. So which ranges from just seeing, am I gonna get exactly the same conclusion, for example, on the ranking of the concepts, to like question level accuracy and correlations being evaluated and compared. So that's but it yeah, we always have these parallel test processes going on, and yeah, that just makes sense.
Do you have a big team doing this? It feels like a lot of work.
Yeah, so first, like, we streamlined crazily the whole process, going from creating your audience to parallel testing it. So actually, most of the work works on the client's side, and it's something that takes like running a full blown parallel test, and I think the result is a like a 2 hour thing. It's not like it's a multi-days thing. So everything is like fully streamlined. And yes, we have like basically a team of solution architects that are helping people with how to frame these evaluations in a fair and accurate way, fair to basically both sides, I would say, and what can be done and what can't be done.
So when I'm talking about synthetic, clients ask me, what's the best practice? What's the best use case of synthetic today?
Yeah,
Where might it be in a few months? And where should I not use it? I
yeah,
assume you get those similar kind of questions. How do you kind of answer that today?
yeah. Maybe let's focus on digital twins for a moment
Okay.
because I think it's very different from Boost. Basically, from my perspective, the way I think about it is by thinking in terms of stakes of the decisions, right?
Yep.
So there is a very simple framework you can use to and apply to see if something should be done through twins or through real fields. So for very micro stake decisions, right? For example, you're gonna use your brain, or today, like we think less and less, like when we replaced like ourselves count mental maths with calculators. So now we use ChatGPT or other stuff, right? Then you have, I would say, medium low complexity tasks where usually like it's heavily dominated by cloud and ChatGPT and similar things, right? Then you have, and that's a sweet spot, medium high stakes decisions where it's pretty important as a decision, but you won't necessarily want to run a full field, program the questionnaire, and do all this stuff that we know are pretty annoying and costly, right?
Yeah.
While the stake of the decision is maybe not high enough for us to actually get through the pain of doing it. And for high stakes, very high stakes decisions, obviously you'll run full field and do things like normal. But basically, there's a whole spectrum of decisions where you want to take this decision with the customer in the loop, but you just can't afford it, both in terms of time and dollars. And that's basically where all of this is good. Now, if you rethink now from this framework's perspective, like basically there's so many marketers that are launching ads and campaigns without the customer in the loop. There's so many features that are getting shipped without people having the customer in the loop. There's so many claims we make on, like, I don't know, this specific audience, like, yeah, if that was on the market, like, they would love it, they would adopt, and actually that test was that claim wasn't tested. So all of these things that aren't tested but should be are the things where today basically you can use twins. Now, whether twins like approaches will also take high stakes and super high stakes decisions in the future, like, it will probably eat more and more of that field, but they will still need heavy data collection under for them to
Yeah.
actually work.
Okay. That's interesting. The digital twins, how well do they do? You mentioned advertising testing. Can digital twins today or in the future pick up on more nuance with human behavior and
Yeah.
harder things to describe from human beings, which are harder to explain and probably harder to train a model on? How do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, there's many ways to deal with it. So first, models are getting better. That's one thing. The second thing is, you need great primary data to be able to map individuals at the individual level and to understand what they
Yeah.
like, what they don't like, and so on. But to get the nuance and the actual effectiveness of an ad, there's more that you need. And so we basically also use like secondary data to model some of these things. So,
Okay.
and there's many different types of secondary data that can be used, basically, especially crafted at the brand level, like historical ad effectiveness, like examples of, like, ads that worked amazingly versus others that didn't, and like history of CTRs and conversions, and so all of this data can be used to better model the twins, and it's the kind of thing that we do to basically overperform on these kinds of use cases.
Okay.
By the way,
Um,
Brian, that's also why I don't believe at all in the approaches that are of like this typical like synthetic panels that are basically getting GPT style models to say, you are is an 18-year-old or blah blah
yeah.
blah blah. Like if you give too much power to the models, like they are not able to get the nuances, and they always fall back to like saying what you want to hear. So the problem is when you ask to
Yes.
the person, "What do you think of this ad?" Like to an LLM, "What do you think of this ad?" You will think that you wanted to say that it's great, and then it's and so
Yes.
and so and so if you give too much power to the LLM, you're basically in huge trouble. And that's
Yeah.
why we basically give a lot of power to the data itself.
Yeah, like acquiescence bias is what we would used to call that in traditional research. Is
Yeah.
people say what they think they want you to say, and that's not
Yeah.
what we want as researchers, right? We want them to be honest, and even if
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's self-depreciating. Really interesting.
By the way, Brian, like something really cool is like you get to
Yeah.
play with the twins product.
Yeah.
You can try to like there's this funny thing with Claude or chatting video where you ask a question. And then it answers like, yeah, I prefer this. And then you say, really, are you sure? And they say, oh, no, sorry, I prefer the other one.
Right.
Or you say you're wrong, even if
Right.
he's right. I say, sorry, like, try to play with a twins product. You'll see that it never does this. Like, because the humans
Yeah.
also don't really do that. So it's a kind of behavior that if you don't model them well, like basically the products aren't actually that useful.
Yeah. 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 I've noticed that myself. Yeah. You talk to a lot of researchers about this. Are there certain misconceptions about synthetic data, either from a boost or a digital twin standpoint? Are there misconceptions that you spend a lot of time kind of either correcting people or advising them or educating people on? Are there certain things that, because for some people, synthetic data and digital twins and boosting and this whole AI is brand new. For you, you've been doing this for a few years now. You're further down the line. Curious, kind of a common misconception that you hear.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's so many of them, but it's getting rarer and rarer and like and smaller, I would say. Like,
Oh,
four
good.
years ago, 4 years ago, like, no one knew anything about it, and actually, and the people that knew or were exposed to it were fully against. And now it's very rare to see someone that will say it's useless for everything. So now what you see in the market is basically most people will tell you that there are some good use cases for it, right? So that's kind of the current mode in the distribution of how people think about it. And you
Yeah.
don't get like it's very rare to see someone will say that that synthetic or simulation is useless for everything. It's getting rare. So the biggest misconception that I would say that people have first is that basically we're just like using an LLM like and just telling it to behave like an 18-24-year-old. And actually, it's not a full misconception, and that's interesting because some vendors are actually doing things that way. So that and that actually creates a lot of noise. So we'll try
Yeah.
to bring the signal, so that's like kind of the way we're trying to do things. So I think what really matters is for anyone like basically evaluating a solution to really understand from the provider's point what data can be used and is used, and how are things getting modeled, because often people tell you like, yeah, we train a model on millions of interviews, and that's actually 99% of the time not what people are actually doing. Like, no one is pre-training models like from scratch, besides maybe the couple of startups that raised 100 million plus. And even if they're doing that, I don't think that's actually the right idea, having trained models of this size. So yeah, the misconception is really about what's under the hood, what's in the data, how these things are actually getting trained and used. And yeah, our answer to all this is to be transparent about how we do things, and we
Yeah.
don't believe that's actually a risk for our company to be doing that.
Well, it's a risk for the industry as well, I think.
Yeah.
And you touched on a lot of things. I completely agree around transparency and also, garbage in, garbage out, and the
Yeah.
training data and how we're building these models is so key. You mentioned individual level deep dives, understanding at the individual level to build the digital twins. And you've also mentioned secondary data to help supplement, I guess. do you ever go back to the same person and keep building on that same individual over time to get even deeper and deeper and more nuance over time?
Yeah, 100%. So
Yeah.
basically, like what we see in our interface is that people are allowed to bookmark tweets that are useful for them, and keep getting asking them more and more questions. Another behavior that we see is because time to insight, like time to full deck, and including questionnaire programming and everything in the product is 15 to 20 minutes. People run a study and they're like, oh, I saw this very interesting insight in this study. Okay, I'm gonna run another one to dig deeper into that, and again and again and again and again. And so all of our game is this kind of loops of basically getting people to keep wanting to get more insights because now insights are affordable. That's basically the play here.
Okay. I'm giving a conference presentation in August around synthetic data at the Future of Insight Summit, and my topic is really the future of sampling. So I'd love your kind of 2 cents on this. Is where do digital twins and boosting and synthetic data, how does that fit in the next few years of marketing research and survey research when thinking about organic or real people? How do you think the industry will evolve in the next few years when we have options of going to real people or using, at that point in 5 years, very mature solutions built like yours?
Yeah.
Um, have you thought of, I'm
So
assuming you've thought that through.
pretty controversial as a question. I can tell you my honest answer to this is who is gonna win from this and who I think is in trouble and needs to rethink things. Again, that's only my opinion, and it's only based on what I've seen happen in other fields that went faster into these kinds of things than market research, and that's kind of what happens there. So the players that are in great shape are data collection companies that are being able to do both scale, depth, and quality. So by scale, I mean a lot of respondents at
Yeah.
scale. By depth, I mean being able to go into niches that are very small, like dermatologists or whatever for B2B, or people with like a very specific like skin, or people that have a very specific car, you know. So that's depth. And quality, basically being able to resolve this growing issue of fraud that's actually fucking up the models, and that's super important. So
Yeah.
so the data collection companies are able to do this, like Prolific, for example, was doing like a,
Yeah.
incredibly well thanks to that, basically, and selling to synthetic data providers, for example, companies like Synth also, that's basically doing also really well on that front. Like that's companies that are gonna do absolutely great if they go into that area. Or I also think that synthetic data companies are gonna do great because I'll tell you why I'm so committed to this area. Because of AI, basically all the timescales have basically collapsed. Okay, so
Yeah.
like companies are shipping features or products in a day, from idea to feature in a day, for example. So like you can't afford to wait like days or weeks or pay a lot of money to get a lot of insights. So you need something new, and that's a new thing. So yeah, 100%, but that's gonna grow. So now, basically, the whole question is for everything that's in between, and the one that are gonna succeed in the in between the data collection, which is one end, and the modeling, which is like the other end. Basically, AI forward companies, agencies, and so on are, I think, gonna do really well because they have the customer in their hands basically for years. But those that aren't AI forward are basically gonna really struggle, if not die. I can see from like their agency customer base Virgin has is pretty large, and all of these are players that basically have been embarked on this journey for some time, and I believe that they're gonna be in great shape basically after this storm.
Yeah, really interesting. Anything else I didn't touch on that you want to promote or talk about, or anything cool you would like to mention?
So obviously all of this was very opinionated, so it's rare
Yeah.
that I go so opinionated on things. But I think like there's so many trends and dynamics that are so interesting right now in the market. What I really think we need to do as an industry right now is try to tackle these key challenges that are happening. And to me, the key challenges that I'm really interested in, happy to chat with anyone that's listening to this, are one, quality. Basically, that's and we have many problems with this when training models, and we need to be very careful. The second one is education, educating the market on what's possible and what's not, and that's why I also try to do as many of these podcasts and conferences as I can. So educating the market is actually really key. And the third one is transparency, because basically, like, us as a company, one of our challenges basically is that a lot of players come to us and brands, agencies, and basically have misconceptions, like the misconception you're basically mentioning, because there's not a lot of transparency on how things are being built under the hood. So I think that's like kind of the three areas that I'm really trying to push for as a person besides the company, and I'm
Yeah.
very interested in speaking to anyone that's interested in either of these three or more areas that are relevant. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Obviously I'm really involved in quality, and I think our industry is tackling it not as aggressively as we probably should,
Yeah.
particularly when we have the ability to build models, and we have a lot of garbage coming in, and we have a lot of fraud, and we have a lot of unengaged respondents, and
Yeah.
that's going to create some challenges for us. I just spoke about broader educating our industry. I go to a lot of conferences, and there are a lot of sales presentations, and you know, we're not doing a lot of education in our industry. You can take a class, you can educate yourself. It's all out there. But broadly in the industry, I wish we did more in terms of, we should have a synthetic sample day at a conference. That probably exists today, and we just speak factually about different ways
Yeah.
to build synthetic models. And you mentioned RAG earlier. What is RAG? And kind of going through all of the different ways that we're building it and get very transparent in it and just educating people. Because, right now, like I was at IAX and there was probably 30 companies building qualitative AI moderation companies, right? It's really hard to sort through that. And you don't have time to sort through 30 companies. And
Yeah.
that's going to be a challenge. You mentioned earlier who's going to win, right? Hopefully the right company wins, or the right companies. Hopefully, right companies win that are doing things
Yeah.
the right way. And I think that if it's an educated market, they will. And
Cool.
so I completely agree with you, and I'm happy to help where I can and what I can do in educating, bringing more content and information and transparency to people, because that's the future of industry really depends on it.
100%. So yeah. Let's
Yeah.
chat offline about all of this.
Yeah. Well,
Let's see what we can do.
how can people reach out to you? I know you're active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Fairgen.ai, is that your website?
Yeah, Fairgen.ai is the website, by the way. Like, Queens has a free trial, so you can just go there and have fun. You don't need to even talk to sales. And yeah, just reach out on LinkedIn. I'm super active there. So, just message
Okay.
me, connect.
Well, next time you're in the US, I'd love to buy you a coffee or lunch, and hopefully I get to see you soon. But I really
Sounds
appreciate you coming on. It's really educational and really informative for people and our listeners. And if you have questions, reach out to Samuel. Thank you for joining us, Dan. We appreciate it, man.
good. Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.